His name is Tim. This man has walked the path of addiction and found
Green County coroner. So that's how I found out that my 19-year-old son,
and we found out there was complications with that pregnancy.
And it came about as a result of some post-traumatic stress disorder.
Of different religions, spirituality, beliefs, whatever. And let's talk about grief.
His name is Tim. All right. Yeah, man. So welcome everybody back. I know we've taken a little bit of a break from doing the live panel discussion. So thank you for everybody who's going to be tuning in today. We do have a few other people coming up, and I have to tell you, man, it's great to be back in the seat and doing these panel discussions, man. So thank you everyone for tuning in. And if you guys get a chance to, let us know where you guys are from. And today is going to be an amazing topic. We're talking about what is your collateral beauty and what is your collateral damage in your grieving process. I want to take a minute and let my colleague introduce himself. Dave?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Tony. I was thinking about the topic. I just kind of got lost in thought for a second, but I'll just introduce myself. My name's Dave Roberts. I'm a parent who's experienced the death of a child, a retired addiction professional, a recent podcast host, an author, and a bereavement support specialist. And I wear several hats, not all at the same time, sometimes all at the same time, but I wear different hats depending on the situation. So that's me in a nutshell.
And I am Tony Lynch. I am your host. I am the founder of Memories of Us, and I'm also the founder of the Global Grief Network. I am a grief coach, and I primarily work with men. And so, as we wait for everyone else to jump in, Dave, I want to pass this over and ask Dave, what do you think about the term collateral beauty and the term collateral damage?
Well, for me, I'm going to start with collateral damage, and I'm going to kind of do a different take on this. I think collateral damage for me, based on my own experiences with grief, I would call necessary damage. In terms of, and I'll use the example of the transition of my daughter Janine when she was 18 years old in March of 2003 due to cancer. There were certain parts of me that needed to go away, that needed to die, that needed to be because of the new perspectives that I needed to embrace. If I were going to embrace perspectives to expand my beliefs about how I thought the world worked prior to my daughter's transition, I would not be here talking with you. I would probably still be stuck in the muck of grief. So what was some of the necessary damage for me were those beliefs, those people, those places that no longer serve me. And they were necessary damage or collateral damage as a result of the perspectives that I needed to embrace if I were going to re-engage in a world that was markedly different without the physical presence of my daughter.
Jay Lewis, thank you for joining us, man. Dave was just talking about it. Take a couple seconds and introduce yourself.
First off, hey, Dave.
Hey, Jay.
I'm Lewis. Basically, I am a motivational speaker that talks to people about being able to overcome grief through using as a platform to get to the next out. That's really what I do.
All right. So we were talking about Dave was just talking about his definition of collateral damage, collateral beauty. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Dave finish that off, and then we're waiting for Dorian to jump on. So I'll let him in as we go, and then I will just go around the board and talk and dive into it.
Well, the collateral beauty
Okay.
piece for me, and it's different, I know for everybody, but for me, it was those people that came into my life when I least expected it. Those people that got me through a specific moment, that introduced me to a new perspective, or that would just call out of the blue and ask how I was doing, share a memory about my daughter or anybody else that I lost. It was those things that out of the blue that gave me moments of lightness amidst the darkness that I was experiencing, specifically in early grief. And anything that happened just to reinforce to me that our spirit survives in consciousness after our physical death. Things like, signs from the universe, hearing a song on the radio when I was thinking of my daughter that we both enjoyed, meeting somebody who had the exact same name or the exact same spelling of her name. And I can tell you a very quick story that will probably summarize this whole collateral beauty piece for me. I was presenting at a Southern Humanities Conference. I believe it was Savannah, Georgia. This was a few years ago. And I called, I think it was a Hilton reservation switchboard to make a reservation. And Jay and Tony, you're going to get somebody who's going to pick up at random. You never know who you're going to get, who's going to pick up the phone. So I call, somebody picks up the phone and says, "Hi, this is Janine. Can I help you?" And I'm thinking to myself, boy, it's going to be a great trip. And now my daughter spelled her name Jeannine. Very uncommon spelling. So after I got done talking to Janine, which was kind of surreal in and of itself, I had a nudge. I said, "Hey, ask her how she spells her name." So I said, "Janine, do you mind? I know it's going to sound like a weird question, but can you tell me how you spell your name?" Jeannine. If there was a microphone, man, I would have dropped it. If I had my podcast mic in front of me, that thing was going out the window, when that happened. So those are the things for me with collateral beauty, or a person who just comes out of the blue when you're having a really bad moment, shares a memory about your daughter that gets you through that moment. Then you may not see him again for forever, but for that instance, it got me through. And those are the things I define. It's just those little moments that add up to just like one, stupendous moment,
Yeah.
and life-changing moment, and life-changing perspective.
I want to take a moment and recognize Mr. Mario P. Fields for tuning in. Thank you, brother. It's good to see you up here. Got to catch up with you real soon, man. A lot of things have been going on. A lot of beautiful things have been going on. So great to see you up here. And don't forget to leave us some comments. Let us know what you think about everything. Jay Lewis, same question.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask. So, what would be your definition? And an example of your collateral beauty and your collateral damage in your grief journey.
Collateral damage is honestly anything that a person goes through. That is the collateral damage part. Now, for me, it happened to be when I became a single father. When my wife died in 2016, I went from being 50% of raising children to becoming a 100% entity. That was scary because, you're not understanding that the demographic, how to you're first trying to live life how you have always lived. I mean, for 17 years, I was raising my two daughters with my wife. So for the longest time, that's exactly how I decided I could go. Not really that situation changed the minute that the circumstance changes.
Mm-hmm.
And the collateral damage aspect for me. And what became of it, the collateral beauty of the whole thing, was the relationship I now share with my daughters. I mean, it's so amazing that from 13 and 17, when I started this journey with them, to now, I have one daughter that just graduated from Brandeis University. She'll be 22 in August. My oldest daughter, she's very career oriented. She's 25 now. And when we talk to each other, because again, one lives in New Jersey, the other one actually lives here with me. And when we talk, it's like our conversations now are interesting, and both of them have been able to let me know how they appreciate that daddy didn't just leave them. Although mommy had to leave, daddy didn't just walk out. Daddy chose to stay. And it created a sense of strength within me. And it also created a reality that, I can have a brand new family demographic. I wish it included my wife, but it does not. And since it doesn't, I have to put my foot forward as best as I can. And that's the collateral beauty part of it, because there are so many single fathers out here in America that go through so many different things, and they don't understand that their life has to change. They can no longer be the quote unquote strict authoritarian that they used to be. They now have to be a little more open, a little more understanding, in order to have a back and forth relationship. And it's different than when you have a two-parent household. Because in a two-parent household, one person gets a chance to be they get a chance to be the barrier, while the other person can be the stick, put it that way. In a single parent household, you have to learn to be both. At some point, you have to be able to understand the circumstance, and at other times you still have to put your foot down, and it's a balancing act. But
Right.
as you grow,
Okay.
you get a chance to see it.
Okay. I can definitely dig that. Dorian just joined us. Dorian, if you want to unmute yourself and take a few seconds and introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. My name is Dorian Johnson, and I've been part of the network for a few months now, and had the opportunity to sit on some of these panels and podcasts and that. Co-authored a book called The View from Above. It's the story about looking for my son who passed away about 6 years ago, and the life lessons that I learned on taking his the hike that he took, where got too close to the river, and we found him a few days later in that. But I'm grateful to be here, and we've had a lot of good conversations about collateral damage, collateral beauty, and I'm just excited about this conversation that we get to have.
Yes. Now I'm gonna ask you the same question. Dave talked about it earlier, and Jay Lewis just got done talking about it. So when you look at think about the term collateral beauty and collateral damage, what would be your definition, and what would be your example of both?
Okay. I think the first thing that comes to my mind as far as collateral damage is almost like a bull in a china shop, where somebody because of their actions, because of their thoughts, because of the unfairness, the injustice of something, they're willing to, or even the fact that they've gotten to the point where they struggle with the idea that no matter what happens, nothing either going to happen to them, or it doesn't really matter what happens to them. And so they just go through life at the point of saying, it doesn't matter whether I steamroll somebody, whether I walk on them, whether I invalidate their feelings and emotions, all of that. I think that's my definition of collateral damage, which affects so many people that they have no idea, and even generations. On the flip side, I think that when I first heard the concept of collateral beauty, it's so counterintuitive because of the situations that we go through that create the collateral beauty. Because we can look at the collateral beauty caused by somebody's collateral damage, and we can look at this and we can say, you know what? If it had not been for this experience or going through what we've gone through, I wouldn't have met these three fantastic individuals who I'm honored to be on this panel with, right? I wouldn't have the opportunity to share the love that I have for my son and share what I've learned since his passing. And so I think, we look at the collateral damage, and it's almost like having a ball and chain when, tied onto the back of a horse or something, running through a store, running through a house, running through something that has so many things in close proximity. And yet the lessons that we learn, the humility we gain, the perspective that we have is all a beautiful thing that allows us to see life with such a different lens. I think that's the beauty that I have received from it. It's not always easy to find it, but I guarantee you, once we find it, we find other strings attached to it, so to speak, and it just is like a spider web.
I love that. We got a comment up here from Jerry. I'm gonna read it out. His comment is, "This is a worthwhile podcast." Thank you for that, Jerry. That means an awful lot to us, man. And he says, for him, the collateral damage was loneliness and depression, and the collateral beauty came later, being able to help people through their own loss. And I think that's another great thing. And by the way, if I don't know if anybody that's tuning in right now, you guys are aware this month is dedicated to Men's Mental Health Month. So there's a lot of things going on right now. Men are actually starting to talk. They're looking for help and things like that. So going back to the comment, hey, that is absolutely correct. The loneliness and the depression, and the beauty doesn't come until later. You know what I'm saying? Because you have to go through the emotions. You have to go through. You have to go through your go through, I guess. If that's a fair statement, you have to go through your go through. And as men, go ahead, Dave.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Tony. I was going to respond to Jerry because I had talked about necessary damage, but there was collateral damage for me in the traditional sense. For Jerry, it was loneliness and depression. For me, it was sad. It was sadness, probably mild periods of depression for me. Disconnectedness from myself and the world around me, guilt over thinking that I should have done more for my daughter than I could have. I should have seen her cancer coming sooner. And I think the collateral beauty, like with Jerry, was being able to be present and bear witness to other individuals' losses and to be able to provide some guidance and support through that. But the other thing that I want to add to that, as far as this goes into the collateral beauty piece, was that once I began to learn that I could transform the relationship with my daughter, that she was always going to be in my heart, in my soul, that there was going to be that continued bond. it opened up so many other options for me, so many other options to meet some great people, but it also allowed me to take a look at my father's decisions to leave when I was younger and my mother's decisions to overprotect me differently. All of that allowed me to find peace with that. And also, because of my acceptance of my father's actions and my acceptance of my now redefined role in this wide, expansive universe of mine, I was able to, 2 years ago, realize that I was no longer an only child for 66 years. I discovered through the wonders of ancestry.com that I have a wonderful sibling um, that in New Mexico, and we have been in contact, and I have now additional DNA family. And one of the things that I had mentioned to her, and I had mentioned to other people, said, "Boy, I wish I had a sibling that I could have gone through this with or had some support with when my daughter was sick." I I stated my intention to the universe, and years later, it answered. And so those are the other pieces with the collateral beauty, collateral damage part. Was just a lot of other opportunities opened up for me because of my willingness to accept that my world was different and to embrace different perspectives.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We got a comment over here. I want to bring up, and maybe we could talk about it a little bit. It actually makes it makes sense. The way the individual framed it. It goes, there is a strong case for the framing of the term to be collateral survivor rather than beauty, right? There's beauty, wonder, hope, etc. in what is happening. However, for many people, it is simply survival. And there is nothing wrong with this, and it is the reality. Often we try to gloss situations, apply the silver lining. However, the damage that is done is too difficult to change. Rather, we learn to adopt and survive. I like that. I really do like that, and that's why we love having these discussions, because yes, you can frame it as collateral survivor, right? Um, and it was told to me a long time ago. Sometimes over a period of time, you have to change the story. The story within you have to change, you know. But collateral survivor, yes, you know what? I'd be the first one to tell you. Um, when you lose someone that's close to you or go through something very traumatic, you do go into survival mode, you know. Um, and people can become collateral, people can become collateral damage in that process. When I think about this, and I want to dive into my own collateral beauty and collateral damage and associated with this. When I went into survival mode, um, there wasn't too many people that wanted to stay in my way. Not too many. You know what I'm saying? My life had been destroyed. My son, when my son passed away, you have to remember I went from being a father to to not having anything after that. It was just me alone again. So, my collateral damage is that, like with most people, and I know there's a lot of people out there that can relate to this. Your world changes. Your world changes. I thought I had, I thought I had the next, what I'm saying, 15 to 18 years to raise my son, to be a part of that. And then when he passed away, it was all gone again. Right. You know what I'm saying? So now I have to figure out what I'm going to do. So damage, I was collateral damage, and everything else around me was just there for the most part. And I had to figure out how to move again. I had to figure out how to breathe. I had to figure out, how to talk. I had to figure out who I became throughout this process, because my whole reality, we talked about this a little earlier. My reality changed. Everything about it changed. Like, now that I know these things are possible, what else is possible? There was a sense of fear. um, there was a sense of shame. What else could I have done to protect my son? There was a sense of wanting to give up, and I almost did a couple times, actually. I gave up on life. I gave up on my faith. I gave up on everything that I had held dear to, because I didn't understand it. There was a huge misunderstanding in my life. I was my collateral damage. I was, to be honest with you, I was my collateral damage.
Absolutely.
And just like most of us on this panel right now, my collateral beauty was one, figuring out how to use my pain as a benefit and not as a downfall. So being able to sit with other men, being able to help them get through theirs had brought me joy. And I didn't know this before, right? Because I was such a hermit. I was such an introvert. I didn't know that, that would be my thing. That was going to be my jam, right? But I found that out when, let's say 2 days after my son had passed away. I was actually in a store, and somebody had walked up to me, and I was just standing in line, and he comes up to me. He goes, "I know I'm supposed to be here, and for some odd reason, I'm supposed to talk to you." So I started, that's the first time those dots started to connect, and I didn't understand why, but I just knew right in that moment, I just needed to shut up. I just needed to be quiet, and I stood there. We stood there in front of everybody for probably about an hour or so, just talking. And people were coming up, going, "Oh my God, this is so beautiful! Seeing two men talk about what's going on." The man had just lost his son earlier that day, and so he went to the house and left and just driving around. And we just ended up in the store together. And so that was like this thing, and I was just like, man, I wish I could I wish I could do more of this, right? And over a period of time, like I didn't just jump into it. It took me over a period of time till that beauty started to come out, and the dots were starting to form. And then I got hit again with my mother passing away, right? And so it took me back again. Bam! I was like, oh man, like now, I told I told someone, I said, I'm an orphan now. What do you mean? I said, I have no parents. I'm an orphan. I'm all alone again. My son is gone. My younger brother is gone. And then I started thinking about it, and I made a joke. I said, now I know what it's like to be like a dinosaur, because when I'm gone, I'm extinct, right? There'll be nobody else behind me. So it was like my own inside joke. Saying a lot of people don't like it, but you have to find a way to laugh. Um, Definitely have to find a way to laugh. And so I did. I started using things like that. Um, and the beauty came after that. It was like, you know what? I'm already in pain. I might as well do something with it, something positive. And so I started my nonprofit. I began that work. I started podcasting. And the beauty is still revealing itself. It's still bringing good people into my life. You know what I'm saying? I got Dave, I got Dorian, Dave, Mario, the whole Global Grief Network family, the people, the men I talk to within my nonprofit, members of us. The beauty is still revealing itself. And my fiance came into my life, and now I'm working on changing my story. Not The pain is always going to be there, but there's a lot more to it than just the pain, if you want it. So I would say that would be my biggest collateral damage was me, and the biggest collateral beauty in it all was the story that's unfolding now.
Yeah.
Understood. Absolutely. I just wanted to make a quick comment. A combination of what Jerry was talking about and what you was just recently saying. Listen, what's interesting is that loneliness, that feeling of isolation. You talked about it, feeling like a hermit.
Hmm.
At a certain point, you know, you you don't believe that anyone else can understand your pain. So you you internalize it. And when you internalize it, you you do everything you can to separate yourself
Hmm.
from everyone else, because one, you don't want to be a burden to anyone in your mind. And then you also don't want to, especially when you're a man, you don't want to seem like you're not strong. So you have to sit in by yourself for a long time. But the benefit of that is that when you know the difference between being alone and being lonely, alone is truly a benefit because it gives you an opportunity to recharge. It gives you an opportunity to learn more about yourself. There are things that you may not have understood when you were part of a group that now.
Oops.
Oops, we lost them.
He'll be back up there.
Boy, he said he must have said something not very nice, Tony, and you just went, dude, bye.
Yeah, he'll be back up here.
Oh,
His
yes.
is probably out. So Jerry,
You know-
thank you for tuning in, man. Thank you for the comments and everything, and
Yes.
thank you for the compliment.
Yeah.
Yes, I do feel like I am a better man. Here he is. He's back.
Sorry about that.
No, you good, brother. We was just
Hey.
talking about it. You was getting into the groove, and we were like, "Oh, well, there he is." He's
No,
just going to leave us in suspense.
my bad. But I mean,
Okay.
real quick, I'm gonna say this, and I'll be done. But the reality is that when we're going through whatever we're going through, the benefit of that alone versus lonely aspect is the fact that, you know, like I said, you're starting to understand more about yourself because that time that you have alone is giving you that opportunity.
Yeah.
Lonely, you can be around 100 people, still be lonely. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, that's the difference. So understanding that isolation can be a benefit. You know, I won't necessarily use the term hermit, but I will say isolation is a benefit, you know, in that respect.
I want to add to that, and then I'm gonna get some other get Dave or either Dorian's opinion on this as well. You know, I agree with you. I do agree with you. Being alone has its benefits, right? Now, depending on the mind state that you're in, being alone can be very dangerous as well. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, being lonely, being around people and being lonely inside, you know what I'm saying? I've been like that my whole entire life. It wasn't until, I met people like me that, that it started to dissipate. Now, when I found myself alone, yes, I did have the chance to recharge, but that's when the hardest battles for me started. You know what I'm saying? Because there was a sense of I wanted to give up, and there was nobody here to say, you know what I'm saying, that it's okay to feel the way that you are, but it's not okay to give up. There was nobody there to say, what you're feeling is normal, because you have to think about it from a male's perspective. When we get into our head like that, none of this is normal. When we have to experience these traumas and these losses, it doesn't feel normal. This is unfamiliar territory to us. So, and for me, and I can only speak from my perspective. When I was by myself, that's when I was the most dangerous.
Now, I'm gonna say this real quick, and then you go on. It is a double-edged sword. You're absolutely right. It's a double-edged sword. It's Go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
No, man, you keep going.
All I was going to say was that it's a challenge to be able to balance those two, because at times you're absolutely right, Tony. You, the isolation can drive you crazy, you know, but sometimes the isolation is kind of what you need a little bit. But again, it's a very thin line.
Yeah,
It's
been like,
such a double-edged sword. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
go ahead, Dave.
I think it all depends on how we look at the concept of being alone. Do we see it as being a potential benefit? Is that, as I think as Jay had mentioned, does it allow us to go within to discover some potential tools or things about ourselves that can help us through our grief journey? Or is being alone could definitely be, as you said, a double-edged sword if we're especially ruminating with guilt, with shame over a lot of different things related to the losses of our loved ones. And then that's when was we as men get into our heads and we're our own worst enemies. I remember seeing a meme saying that sometimes our own worst enemy lies between our two ears. And it's all the stuff that we keep telling ourselves about what we should have done, what we didn't do, what we could have been, and what we should have been. And so I think it depends on how we take a look at being alone as an opportunity for growth, or do we look at it as as something that will stunt our growth because we end up and going back to those emotions that may have kept us stuck in the first place.
Right. Dorian, you want to chime in on that?
I do. You know, I think I view I'm not lonely. I don't ever get lonely because I can go to a store, I can go somewhere and have a conversation with anybody, right? Go to the store or go to the library or go somewhere, reach out to somebody and have a conversation. I love being alone for the very reason what we're talking about, because I get re-energized from that and allow, different thoughts to come in and out and random thoughts. But sometimes that being alone is the deep aching gnaw that just absolutely gets me, And the reason I say it that way is because it's almost as if there's nothing, or as I view it, no one, or there's nothing that can help fill that emptiness of feeling alone. And whatever it is that I'm looking for, maybe I don't know. Maybe it's something that I need to address in myself that I haven't woken up from being so numbed off from that. Now, I'm going to say it this way also. One thing that I really learned about grief and about healing and even recovery from grief is there's so many different aspects that we can venture into from what our knowledge of or from our experience is. And the reason I say it that way is because not long after my son passed away, I reached out to one of his teachers and asked if she could help me with a program that we could be able to connect with and acknowledge some of these kids who are so good. That's just who they are, right? You don't ever have to be concerned about them disrespecting or bullying or whatever. In the meantime, she asked me if I would help start a support group, an LGBTQ plus support group. I'm not putting anything on it. It's not my trial. It's not anything I will ever have to question. In the first meeting that we went to, there was about 25 of us, and there were students. There were a few adults there. Some of them were parents. Some of them were counselors, things like that. And so as we went around the table, I just said, tell us who you are, what you're going through, what you're struggling with, if you are, and how you feel about it. Meaning, do you feel accepted or supported or loved or wanted or needed or seen or heard or anything like that? So as they went around, it came to me. And I just took about 5 seconds per person and looked at everybody in the eye, just so that they could know that I am seeing them for who they are, not what we're here talking about. Mm-hmm. It had nothing to do with that. Because so as I'm looking at everybody, finally, I look at the person next to me and I just made the comment, said, this is not my trial. This is not what I ever have to question. And yet, I don't, because of the loss of my son, I don't feel supported. I don't feel loved or wanted or needed or heard or seen or accepted or any of that. I said, we're the same, just different experiences, different trials. And these kids who have their head down and that, and looking, not they're listening, but they're not looking. They pick their head up and look at me like, what did he just say? And so as we go along, I would see these kids and I would hold my arms out when I would see them, and they would come give me a hug. And if they were a little standoffish, I'm like, seriously? Get over here. It's not contagious. Come here. Come give me a hug. And so all of a sudden, it allowed my healing process through something I didn't even consider that would be something that would fulfill or fill me in that aloneness. It was so big, because all of a sudden I took that and looked at a whole bunch of other people without judgment, without guilt or shame or any of this putting on it, no expectations, nothing. And all of a sudden I have these kids who look to me and say, no matter what, he sees me, he accepts me, he loves me. And that in itself was so big for me. And I to this day, I'm so grateful for that. And now as I meet other people, I can do exactly the same thing. And I can look at them and I can say, you know what? I understand that I don't understand what you've gone through. I don't understand your pain. But the feelings and emotions that we both feel because of our experiences are the same. So we're the same, but we're different also, and it's beautiful. That's part of the collateral beauty that has helped me. That's part of the collateral beauty that I have learned from in so many other instances as well. It's not just that accepted or that support group,
Dorian, you just really hit the nail on the head in a certain situation. When you were talking about you weren't feeling supported, due to the loss of your son, and you sought support or you found support in a situation that you weren't really looking to be in.
Mm-mm.
But what was interesting is that I think we opened up our eyes when something occurs.
Yeah.
Because I understand what you're saying. I mean, for a long time, I didn't feel supported by the people I thought would support me. But I was able to find friendship outside of a group that I normally wouldn't associate myself with.
Mm-hmm.
But when I did, I realized that there was a genuine caring.
Yep.
That it wasn't a situation where I was supposed to feel a certain way and they were supposed to feel a certain way. It was just the fact that they understood me and they accepted me, where,
Yep.
again, the support system I thought that I was supposed to have had vanished, and for whatever reason. But I understand exactly what you're saying. Being able to find yourself while at the same time being able to understand someone else's circumstance.
Yeah.
That becomes a benefit. And you're right, that becomes the collateral beauty
Yeah.
of the circumstance.
Because you know what? To me, it's a matter of not putting definitions or anything on it. It's just the fact of saying, this is the person. I see their identity, even if they're trying to identify as whatever. Like I've said before, I wear boots and Wranglers. I don't identify as a cowboy or anything like that. I like wearing them and I like to country dance. That's part of my identity. And so if we can look at the person's identity, not what they're trying to find in themselves because of grief, because of loss, because of whatever. There are so many different types of loss because of grief. Our identity, our meaning, our self-trust, our all of these things that make us fall down sometimes and bloody our nose, and we get up and somebody looks at us and says, I've been there. And the only way that we would have met them is if we would not have fallen down on the sidewalk and bloodied our nose and let them help us up, we would have never met them,
Right.
and learned from them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's what it takes. What do you think, Tony?
Well, I want to put this comment up here and talk about this. Then we'll dive into that, and I'm gonna ask Dave I'm gonna ask you guys what you guys think about this as well. There's some truth in this, right? Cleopatra Nichols. When you're isolated, you're forced to deal with yourself and everything that comes with that. Some people are not always ready to face that mirror, and everything comes to the surface. The beauty comes when you find the healing within that. And there's a couple things that we can unpack in this when we talk about collateral damage and collateral beauty, and I want to ask Dave, what do you think about that?
I think Cleo's right on the money. I think she's on point because for me, once I silenced everything that was going on in my head, I sat in the quiet. I took a deep dive into myself. I got all the answers that I needed moving forward in terms of how I was going to re-engage in a world that was different. And I think that's one of the collateral beauty pieces of being alone, is that you have a chance to take a deep dive within yourself and just really take a look at everything and decide, okay, what do I need to do moving forward without any influence? We rely on ourselves for that. And all the answers that we need, and we discover this, come from within anyway. We can take a look at other people's perceptions or observations. So bottom line, we're the actor, we're the composer, we're the conductors. We can create our own symphony to re-engage in a new world if we so choose. But the part of that is that we have to sit with ourselves and we got to look at the good, the not so good, and even the ugly parts of ourselves in order to be able for that process to come to fruition. So Cleo's right on point. She's right on point with me with that. So I would agree with that 100%.
I want to tell Jerry he doesn't have to apologize for the comment, brother. We're just appreciating that you're here and you're engaging with us. So no, you don't owe any apologies for that. Thank you for your participation and showing up. And maybe one day we can get you up here as well, man. So we often this is what we do. This is what we do. So don't ever apologize, brother. We appreciate you. Anybody else want to dive into that comment?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on what Miss Cleo was saying, and what's interesting is I recently got finished reading David Coggin's "Can't Hurt Me," and the one thing he mentions in that is that sometimes you have to look in the truth mirror, and that truth mirror means that you have to face everything that's going on. And ultimately, you're taking a look at yourself. And no matter what has happened, you have to take some form of responsibility for it. Because that's going to be your catalyst to healing, to moving forward. And, some tragic things can happen to us. And again, we're not responsible for them. Not that part. If somebody passed away, that's not our responsibility. It happens. But what we learn from it, that's where the area of looking in the mirror comes in. Because we can make the choice to not face it. And if we make that choice to not face it, then we will stay bombarded by the grief. But once we take a second to actually look in that mirror and say, what can I do to get to a better version of me from this circumstance? And then be able to move forward from there. I mean, it's going to take some time. You know, obviously, it's not a quick situation, but you are finally giving yourself an opportunity to actually look in that mirror.
Okay. I like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just was going to say, I think one of the greatest things that looking in the mirror and being completely vulnerable, when I say completely, that's not completely true, but vulnerable in the fact of being able to talk about certain things that not everybody can talk about. You know, the loss of my son and how I'm going. You know, what I go through with that. But it also allowed me to be authentic in my feelings, my emotions, my approach, the words I use. I don't choose my words wisely. I'm not, but what it allows me to do is has allowed me to realize who I am. And when I say it that way, not just who I am, you know, in certain circumstances, it's the fact of who I am. And when I say something, I say it because I think it's funny and I laugh. And if somebody else chooses to laugh along with me, that's fantastic. It doesn't take anything away from what I think is funny, right? Or a very strong statement in saying, you know what, this is what I've learned, and be very confident and even courageous in saying certain things when I say I don't agree with that because of my experience in that. So to be vulnerable and to go forward in when I hear somebody is hurting, it means that I can sit with them for however long, offer compassion, offer kindness, offer grace. Grace saying, look, here's where you are. You've got to be a little softer on yourself. You can't live in shame. You can't live in guilt. You can't live in that and ever try to heal, you know? And so it wasn't until I had somebody look at me and say, do you offer that to you? And I said, it's so much easier to offer it to everybody else. And so for me to be alone and work through some of that stuff, I realized that grace is patience and kindness and compassion and allowing me to make mistakes and say, you know what, that's okay. It wasn't a mistake. What'd you learn? You know?
I like that. Me and Jay was talking about that a little earlier. You have to be willing to go through things to learn from them, you know, not be afraid to fail. And I think when we
Yeah.
talk about this journey of grief and the collateral beauty and collateral damage that goes along with it, there's a multitude of things that tie into it, right? You know, because in grief, you know, you may think that you're doing the right things, right? You know what I'm saying? Because we all have this idea about how we want it to go or how it should look, right? You know, and then we find out, you know, a little bit later that we was totally wrong. I can tell you I was, you know, I was totally wrong. And what came of it was that this sense of why am I trying to do what everyone else is doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Because we realize just like with a lot of things in this world, what works for one person may not work for you. So, you know, don't think that it's a one size fit all. You know what I'm saying? That's the purpose of the path of grief is to, you know, figure out the things that work for you. And during you hit it on the head, you have to have grace within yourself. You have to have patience within yourself. You have to learn how to love yourself on a whole new level because you're healing on a whole new level, right? It's just not like a heartbreak or, you know what I'm saying, or a
Oh
knife
my
or a gunshot
gosh.
wound or something like that, right? You know what I'm saying? This is something that is going to mold you, right? And but you have the authority to let it mold you in such a positive way.
And there's something else too. We talked about looking in the mirror. I think the first thing that we need to accept when we look at the mirror is that we're not the same person anymore,
Right.
and
Yes.
that
Absolutely.
we need to, in order to move forward, we need to kind of redefine the narrative within ourselves, bring those people into our circle who reflect our needs at that particular point, leave people outside of the circle who don't,
Hmm.
and and also embrace specific type of coping skills or strategies that are going to serve us going forward. And the other thing, I don't think there's any right or wrong thing in grief. I mean, we may try, it's trial and error. There are
Right.
some
Yes.
things
Yes.
that
Yes.
we do in early grief that may not have worked out, but it just didn't work out because for a variety of different reasons. It just might have not fit our own specific grieving style. I think it's all about trial and error, as
It is.
opposed to being right or wrong. Because if we say, well, gee, to me, this is me. If I said to myself in early grief, I was wrong doing this, I would become more self-judgmental, and that's just
Yeah.
me. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of, hey, it just didn't work out. I tried it, it didn't work. I just need to find something that's going to suit me. It's like going through a box of suits and trying to figure out which one's going to fit. You got to try on a bunch of them, and then once you find the suit that fits, you wear that moving forward.
Oh my God, that is
I,
hilarious. I love that.
I, I think we have a mantra for the Global Grief Network right there.
Hey, we'll talk about that a little bit before we get off the show. Jerry, thank you again for the comment. He wrote it here. He also thinks that an essential part of recovery is to choose the people as you see as part of your inner circle. I know he put I as his part of his inner circle without damaging those who no longer fit the reality.
Yeah.
You know
Uh,
what? That is huge. That is
Big
huge.
time.
And you know what? I totally agree because when you are in that stage of healing and recovery and things, there are going to be people that no longer fit, right?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because you have to do so much work on yourself, but it's worth it. It's so worth it. You have to do so much work on yourself that in order for you to stay on the path of healing, you have to surround yourself with people that are on similar paths with you, right? That way, like there's so many people that I've run across, Dave, Dorian, Jay, what I'm saying, Sergeant Major, a lot of people that I've met along the path that have done certain things, right? That I was able to hold on to and implement them into my journey as well. And I can only hope that, the things that I've gone through, I was able to give to someone else so that they can hold on to. But the rest of the people that decided to go, it used to make me upset. Now I realize it's just part of the journey, and I was stronger for it, right? I was stronger because the journey humiliated me so much because I thought I was a strong individual. Then I realized that I wasn't so strong, and then it humbled me. It humbled me to be open enough to the individuals who were coming around me to say, I need some guidance. I need some help. I need somebody to mentor me. I need someone to help me until I can, figure it out. And these people were so generous. Everybody was so generous in their knowledge, and the things that they did that, it was, I found grace. I filled my heart with gratitude and appreciation because now I'm around people who I like to say were just like me, right? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not broken. I was hurt, and it took me a long time to figure that out. I'm not broken. I'm hurt, and I needed to heal. And so changing those little things in my vocabulary um, set this path, that I've been walking ever since then. And
Well,
so, that's what it was, man.
well, you know what, Tony? I mean, I'll say it like this, and I think Jerry hit it right on the head in his comment. people that no longer fit.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn how to kind of extract them without damaging your relationship, being hurt. You know, we're going through things that may not have made you feel so strong. But what was interesting is learning to forgive is where you actually identify and adapt the biggest strength. I mean, Sun Tzu said this. Sometimes a warrior has to learn when not to fight. And when you're dealing with grief, you're always in fight mode
Mm-hmm.
because you need to defend your position. That's your feeling. And if people don't fit that circumstance anymore, you don't let them ride out gracefully. You be combative. I mean, like I said, when my wife died, for instance, I'm just using my situation. When my wife died, um, a lot of people that I thought were going to be there for me weren't there. And what was interesting about that was that not only were they not there, it was like the choice was to make a person feel like they were responsible for my wife's passing. Like I was responsible for it. And, you know, I had to learn how to forgive that, how to let that go
Yeah.
and stop fighting that whole thing, you know. So, I mean, I absolutely understand what you're saying, but I definitely would say that being able to kind of forgive them, forgive yourself, do that whole thing, that becomes a part of the benefit, especially in the collateral healing aspect of things.
Right. Right.
A-
Big shout
Andy,
out to Michael for tuning in. Michael Yersh, thank you for tuning in, brother. Uh, I don't know if you've been catching the conversation, but be sure that, if you have any comments that you want to leave us, man, we're talking about what is your collateral damage, what is your collateral beauty and grief. So welcome to the conversation, man. Thank you for being here, your support. To spin off of what Jay was just saying, anybody have any input you want to put on that?
yes, I got a couple things right off the top of my head based on what Jerry had mentioned about determining who the people that you see in your inner circle and Jay's comment about forgiveness. In Native American medicine, the armadillo is about boundaries.
Mm,
And in Jamie Sams's book and David Carson's book, Medicine Cards, they suggest an exercise that you do based on armadillo medicine, which you take a sheet of paper and you draw a circle. And in that circle, you empower yourself to determine the people, places, and things you wish to experience at that stage in your grief or that phase in your grief. On the outside of the circle are those people, places, and things you wish to not experience, with the understanding that the things that you wish not to experience at one phase of grief could be things that you wish to experience in another phase of grief based on your readiness. So, for individuals who are looking for a way to empower themselves to determine what type of experiences they wish to be a part of, to to have in their inner circle, that might be a good way to do that. Just put pen to paper. The other thing about forgiveness, this reminds me of one of the most profound quotes I ever heard on forgiveness by Neil Peart, who is the late great drummer for the Canadian rock band Rush, who in his book Ghostwriter Travels on the Healing Road talked about what forgiveness entailed for him as he was dealing with two very significant losses in his life, his only daughter and his common law wife. And one of the things he said about forgiveness, and I may be paraphrasing this, but he said there would be no life for me or no peace for me until I learned to forgive life for what it had done to me, forgive others for being alive, and eventually forgive myself for being alive. I thought that was one of the most profound
Wow.
quotes I had ever heard on forgiveness, particularly because I always thought about, yeah, forgiving myself, forgiving others, but never did I ever think about forgiving the hand of fate for dealing that hand of cards to me. But it was a three-pronged process. And I quote that wherever I go because to me, it's just so profound in
Man,
terms of,
that
I
is
mean, what,
deep.
yo, that's really,
Yeah.
he was,
That
he
is
was,
deep.
he was a very introspective, a very deep thinker. He was self-made. I think he didn't even have a high school diploma, but he read a lot of books. He he went on the road after his losses, and he went within to find himself, literally. And these are some of the things he came up with. Just Ghost Rider Travels on the Healing Road. I would recommend for anybody who's going
And
through loss.
Dave, first off, that's a great book, and I want to thank you for recommending it to me actually, because I read it, and you're right. I mean, listen, guys, this guy took an incredible road trip to find himself, and it was amazing because, like Dave was saying, the guy lost, I think, what is his daughter and his wife, you said, right?
Yeah, within a 10-month period of
And
time.
it's like his daughter to a car crash, his wife to like cancer, and at this point, like you said, he hops on his motorcycle and goes like, I don't know, like 35,000 miles or something like that.
Yeah, more like about 55,000 through the United States, Mexico, and Canada.
So, I mean, he jumps on his motorcycle and does his thing. But listen, putting that to how we experience grief, it's our journey. Whether it's hopping on your motorcycle going 55,000 miles, whether it's walking down the street, whether it's reading somebody who's LBTGQ or whatever that is. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the term.
I
But
felt like I just needed to go in motion at that point when he's calling letters and numbers and all of that stuff.
hey, I mean, but no matter where we are in our situation, it means that we're taking a walk. We're
Yeah.
we're learning a little something, through our what like I think Dave likes to call it grief walk, and it's true because when you go through it, whatever your particular journey is, and like you said earlier, Tony, everybody's journey is different.
Yeah.
Man, there is no one size fits all to this. So, what I'm experiencing versus what Dorian's experienced versus what Dave versus what you experienced versus what the audience experienced, it's all different. There may be elements that might ride on each other, but I think everybody's circumstance is different.
Right.
I mean, it's just again, everybody's journey is individual, and I guess that's what I was kind of getting at in that respect.
Well, it's the same saying, when it comes down to grief, and we always talk about it. Yes, it is an individual journey. Grief is a lonely road, right? You know what I'm saying? Grief is such a lonely road, and it's individual, just like your fingerprints. As long as you have your own set of fingerprints, your grief is designed to you. You can't design it around anybody else's, but you can take what everyone else has learned, whether if it's positive or negative, and you can use it. You can find a way to use it and mold it to your benefit, if depending on the direction that you choose to go in. Right? That's the beautiful part about it. Are you going to have ups and downs? Of course you are. That's part of the journey. That's part of the journey. There's, but just like what Dave was just saying about the guy, forgiveness, and did you have forgiving life for what for going on, and forgiving fate for doing these things to you. I mean, these are elements. These are some deep, profound elements that, if used to add it into your journey, it would take on its own definition, right? Because now you're going to find one thing that's going to lead into 10 other things, that's going to lead into 20 to 30 different other things that you're going to be trying to you know what I'm saying, forgive and things like that, right? Life is endless. It's an endless pool of just knowledge and wisdom, challenges, and you know, beautiful, just it's just endless.
Yeah. One thing I got thinking about as we're talking about this, it may sound like a crazy analogy, but if you think about, we watch people who go through grief, and some of us learn lessons that we can in turn share with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Others get bitter and angry and go down a completely different path. Okay. I've watched some kids who, as they grow up in their teens, the conversation that I've had with them, and I learned this from someone else, is to have the conversation saying, guess what? You're a leader. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Look at how all of these other kids are following you. So you have a choice to make right here, right now. What kind of a leader do you want to be? Do you want to take them down this path so that they become disrespectful and bully and do all of these things? Or do you want to realize that no matter what happens, you can say, hey guys, come on, we've got to listen. We need to be respectful and go the opposite way. Whatever happens, you are a leader and they will listen to you and follow you. So, like grief, we have to make a choice. We have to decide, yeah, life is endless. All of these things that add up and we can learn from and take and offer to other people as life lessons of that. We can be a leader in the same concept, saying, which direction do I want to go? Do I want to go down a rabbit hole and stay alone and be lonely and just be ornery and no one wants to talk to me? Or do we want to say, everybody goes through something and everybody has the same emotions and feelings and all of that? How can I be a leader through grief? How can I help others to see that they're not alone?
Anybody want to dovetail off of that?
Wow.
I'll dovetail off of it because I totally agree. You do have the ability, once you get to a certain stage. Once you get to a certain stage, because there's people out there that will make some perfect leaders, right? Once they figure it out, and sometimes you have to let them grow, right?
Mhm.
You have to let life teach them a few things so they know how to lead properly. Anybody can. Some people can jump up and say that they're a leader, but it depends on what you're trying to lead me to, right?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? What you just said earlier. So for those ones who are leading people down the proper road of gratitude and appreciation to become better individuals and human beings in this world, sometimes life has to mature them enough to where they understand. Look how many times you've come to me and said that, and I've always said, I've said it for a long time. I'm not a leader. I'm not a leader. And then something dawned on me, and it was the reality of it. I was right.
And are.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
now I have to choose what sort of leader do I want to be. I want to be
And I,
someone
oh,
who wants to be an example, right? Of doing, it's okay to make mistakes. Own up to your mistakes. It's okay to fail. Just don't fall. Just don't stay down. You have to get up and you have to brush yourself off and you have to keep moving. Now, what you do from that point on determines the rest of your steps. Keep a genuine heart. Be full of forgiveness, and be willing to let others hold you accountable and be accepting of that if you're wrong, right? So all of those different things coming through it, and so I would say you can add that to the category of collateral beauty, right?
Mhm.
Identifying, you finding yourself all over again, identifying the new version of who you are, which direction
Yeah.
you're going to go in, is a huge thing that goes along with that.
Yeah.
And you know, the other thing too, when we talk about leadership in terms of the world of grief, I think we look at, you know, we can lead, do we lead from the front, or there's a lot of it is a servant leadership where we are, and I'm paraphrasing the late Richard Marcinko, who was a Navy SEAL commander, and he was a consultant for business. And one of the things he talked about with servant leadership is that we are humble servants to a noble cause, and the noble cause that we are servants to is trying to inspire individuals to be able to see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel when they can work to help them work through catastrophic loss. We
Mhm.
become present. We become we bear witness, and we become servant leaders to that greater cause for those individuals that choose to want to be a part of that. And we can choose to be a part of that. We can choose not to be a part of that. You know, grief, catastrophic loss can take away a lot, but can never take away our free will.
Yeah.
We can choose anything we want to choose.
Yep.
We can choose not
Yep.
to move forward. We could choose to stay stuck. We could choose to move forward. You know, we could do that. I could throw individuals certain things to say, here, consider this. This may help you move through it. And if they choose not to accept it, I have no control over that. They've made that choice.
Right.
So
Yeah.
free will is always present, and there's always consequences to any choice that we make. And as long as we're willing to accept those consequences, be accountable for those consequences, and not blame anybody else, then that's what's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I totally agree with that. Anybody want to dovetail off of that?
I mean, it's interesting because you know what? Leadership, it's weird because in a lot of situations you don't know where your leadership qualities are until something occurs. And when that situation occurs, you may have to, you know, uh, adopt certain leadership qualities, and you may have to learn how to kind of build your situation as you go.
Hmm.
I mean, the reality is you may have had to adopt becoming the leader, but now you're working through it as you go. You know, it's like, hey, thank you for giving me the sword, but now I got to figure out, how to go forward and then how to lead the people behind me as well. It's a learning process, but at a certain point, I think you get it because through osmosis, you start to understand that, like you said, earlier you said this. You said, I'm not a leader. And then after a while, you realize that you adopted a leadership role. Therefore, you did become a leader. You know, and I think a lot of people that go through grief, part of the remake is finding that they have to now become some form of a leader. Whatever they've lost may no longer, you know, um, be there for them as a guide. For instance, I know a lot of the clients that I talk to in a husband and wife situation, when they lose that spouse, it's interesting because, like I said earlier, your spouse was 50% of whatever you did. And now you have to take on their 50, you know. And so I know when I speak with a lot of clients, their whole thing is, how do I adopt being able to understand that other part? That's where your leadership comes in because you now are learning as you're going through the process but that's automatically making you a leader of the circumstance. I
Mhm.
mean, if you understand what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, definitely understand that. And I think about it now, because for the longest time, honestly, I just wanted to be left alone.
Mhm.
I was okay with finding my little corner in this earth and just being alone. I didn't, like I didn't understand the world. And I guess I've always struggled with understanding how the world works. And my path has pretty much has been a very lonely, I've been alone for a very long time walking this journey. And so, you know, when I experience these, and a lot of times, and I could be wrong, but I'm right from my perspective. So I'm just sharing my perspective. When you experience these losses, for me, I just went, you know what? I think I'm better off alone because if I'm alone, you can't take anything else away from me.
Oh,
Right.
You see what
Right.
I'm saying?
yes.
That's the way that I was. If I'm alone, you can't hurt me anymore.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
That leaves
Yep.
the battle between me and life on an even playing field. If you can't take anything away from me, then you have to come at me in a different way. If I don't have anyone else around me, then you can't hurt me. You can't make me care about them and then take them away from me
Yeah.
or hurt me
Yep.
anymore.
Yep.
So if I'm alone, I'm the only person that have to endure what you throw at me. So in a sense, it was like being accountable for myself, in a very, very selfish way, right? Because now I realize that if I had taken that journey, um, I would have missed the best time of my life, which is, what I'm saying, the experiences that I'm having now with everyone that I come across. I would have denied myself that, but also I look at it in the sense I would have denied everyone else the opportunity to get to know me, right? And so, that's that other side to it right there. I would have been, man, I was fine going to the mountains, digging myself a hole in the side of a mountain and just stand there. Give me some sticks and I can make a fire. You know what I'm saying? Give me a fishing pole. I'll never have to worry about eating because I'll find somewhere to fish. Right. You know what I'm saying? And I'm very simple and basic. I was like, man, I can go do this and just be by myself. That way I ain't got to worry about it anymore. But I would have missed out on the best experience in my life, which is, identifying who I am, um, and having the opportunity to serve so many people, right? Um, and it has been the best feeling discovering that is what makes me happy doing exactly that. I am a servant. I am a servant. I'm a servant to this grief world. I am a servant to my clients. I am a servant to my faith. I'm a servant to anyone who needs me. And I'm also, I try to be, and hopefully I am a guiding light for those who need it the most. That are in this field. Maybe I can take what I've learned and give it away to someone else. So it's I'm glad I didn't take the route of loneliness and isolation, because I wouldn't be sitting here talking. And like I said, in those moments I am the most dangerous because I'm the most dangerous to myself.
Mhm.
And you know what, Tony? It's interesting because, like you say, I mean, I we talked about the whole isolation being that double-edged sword. You
Hmm.
know, for me, it was isolation was that opportunity for me to kind of better grow,
Mm.
for me to understand myself, and then I was able to walk out into the world and have a much better understanding of how to help people. Again, that was the way I saw it, and I ended up forming my way of being a leader through that. I had to first be a student, and
Mm.
part of being that student meant that I needed to get out of my head. I needed to isolate myself from the way I had been thinking for the last X amount of years of my life. You know, and again, so I could readapt and adopt new philosophies. And then once I was able to do that, I was able to go out into the world with a different understanding. So again, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like it's such a double-edged sword with the whole isolation aspect.
Right.
Because, like you said, I mean, look, you can end up being volatile. You know what I'm saying? You can end up,
Oh, yeah.
you can really end up being self-destructive. You know, but again, you can also, on the other side of that coin, you can find yourself
Mhm.
within that isolation. You know,
Yeah.
it's very weird, but again, it goes back to everybody's journey is just different.
Yeah.
Everybody grieves differently,
Right. Right.
and everybody sees this thing differently. So it's not wrong the way you see isolation, and it's not wrong the way I see isolation.
Right. Right.
It's,
No, there's no right or wrong way. The way that you see it is what you do with it and the knowledge that comes along with it. Right. Sometimes you got to fall down and get up, and sometimes you got to get turned around to find the path that you're meant to walk. And so, there's a lot of things to go along with that. I never take anything away from anyone, regardless of the path that they chose, because I realize it's their path, it's their journey. And, I want to respect that wholeheartedly. I want to show appreciation that, hey, if this is what you choose, I respect it and I appreciate you because this is yours. And no matter, like, I can give you what's inside of me if that's what you want, but you have to want it, right, in order to
right.
receive it. So therefore, I don't force anything on anyone. If you need it, I will give it to you freely. I will give it to you wholeheartedly because that's who I am. Just like most of us on this panel. Someone comes and says, "Hey, I need the shirt off your back." You may more than likely you're going to give it to them, right? You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot to unpack there, and so fellas, we are running out of time, so I want to take a few minutes and before we go, anybody want to dovetail, add any more comments to it before we start to close this out?
Just quickly, when you talked about servant leadership is about being connected to something greater than yourself. And being connected to something greater than yourself is another thing that will help us get through challenge.
I like that. I definitely like that. So I want to take a few minutes. We got like 3 minutes before we have to close out. Tell people where they can find you. Dave, you want to go and start it off?
Yep. People can find me on Facebook under Dave Roberts. They can email me at bootsyandangel@gmail.com. If they choose to take a listen to the Teaching Journeys podcast, it's on Apple and Spotify. They can give it a follow, give it a listen. And if they want to find out more about the book that I co-authored with Reverend Patty Farino called One, the Psychology Professor Met the Minister, they can go on Amazon and get more information about it that way. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I love it, man. I love it. Jay.
And you can find me at my website is jl3motivation.com. Also, you can find me on Facebook. My Facebook group is called The Gift of Grief, and I also have another one called Moments of Motivation. So you can touch base on either one of those. I also have a podcast, and of course, my podcast, the name of it is called Give Grief the Middle Finger. Real simple, And my whole thing is just, hey, letting people know that you can use grief to your advantage. And again, like you said, Dave, that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Dorian.
You can find me on Facebook under Dorian Johnson. I have two Facebook groups. One of them is called A Day in the Life of Grief, where I share a lot of different things about either how I'm feeling or I just find different things that go along with grief. And a lot of times it just seems to help other people who know that other people are going through certain things. I also have a group called Unsung Heroes that talk about, I post a lot of things that just good things in the world that people are doing, you know, and just it's I cry and I post and I cry and I post because it's just so good, you know. You can go to Amazon and find the book I co-authored called The View from Above, and it's an award-winning book. You can find it, but most of the time you can just find me on Facebook, friend me. Um, that's Dave's story. That's Jay's story. Tony hasn't told his story yet, but I'm sticking to those two stories right there.
All right, all right. So I am Tony Lynch. I'm the host of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast, where we do one-on-one interviews, live interviews, pre-recorded, and also these panel discussions. So if you guys like this, be sure to go to the YouTube channel, subscribe to it, show us some support. Let us know what you think about it. If you have a topic that you would like to see us dive into, let us know. Also, I'm the founder of the nonprofit Memories of Us. So if you're a male going through something right now and looking for support, come find me on Facebook. I am on Instagram as Men's Grief Support. You can find me on LinkedIn as Tony Lynch. And also, I am one of the founders of the Global Grief Network. So if any one of you out there is a grief worker, you're looking for a home, a place where you guys can make friends that turn into family, be supported, and also, be a part of some amazing things, be around some amazing people. Find us on Facebook, find us on LinkedIn, the Global Grief Network. And also, I have to do this, so I did co-author a book, and it's called Relentless: Empowering Stories of Overcoming Adversity, which is an international bestseller. Find it on Amazon. It's in Kindle version right now. The hard copy is coming out. Download it, leave us a review, tell us what you think. And when it comes down to it, man, we love each and every last one of you guys. And for in respect to Men's Mental Health Month, talk to the men in your family. If you're a man and you're looking for support, go out there, call somebody, talk to somebody, because do not suffer alone. Do not suffer in silence. You are needed in this world. You are loved in this world, and we would like to keep you in this world. And so, with that being said, man, I love each and every last one of you guys. Thank you to my panel members. We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. I believe it will be the 24th of this month. And so we'll have another live panel discussion and some more great topics. So you guys, thank you for your support. Thank you for allowing us to support you. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.